Hello, hello, and happy Wednesday. So first and foremost, I want to make time to thank you all so much for offering me so many encouragements and support at the launch of my new website. It has been going really, really well. I've sold a few more paintings than I guess originally anticipated I would sell, and I am super excited about that. And I'm really happy to finally have gotten this chapter moving along. It was a long time coming, but it feels good that it's here. And really, it wouldn't be going quite so well if it weren't for your support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, it really means a lot to me that you visit my website, that you make comments to me about my website and offer me feedback. And of course, I appreciate the purchases. It's so nice to know that my paintings are making their way to some new homes, some new loving homes at that. And I feel very, very thankful for that. This week's painting process is gonna be quite different than what I normally do. I wasn't really even sure where it was heading at one point. I was inspired to create this painting with some symbols in mind, and basically I asked myself the question, what is it I want to put forward into the world? And that for me is an easy answer. What I want to put forward into the world is kindness, love, and peace. And so with these three themes, I set off to create this painting that has a bit of an all nouveau feel. And that is very, very new for me because it's not something I've ever done before, but it kind of went down that road and I decided to follow it. And I'm super happy I did because I really love how it turned out. I've got a lot of footage to edit, so I am going to do my very best to keep it as short as possible for you while keeping some of the key elements to help you create your own if you wanted to do so. And that's it. I hope you'll feel like joining me in this painting process. And if you'd prefer to just join me with a cup of your favorite brew, I hope you know that that is always welcome also. So let's get going. If you're ever feeling daunted staring at a blank page or a blank canvas, the first thing I would encourage you to do is to just get some paint on that substrate. And to do so as quickly as possible, because as soon as you take away the blankness of the substrate, somehow it starts to get a little bit easier to get things flowing. For me, this is always usually a light wash of some kind of color. Oftentimes it's this bluish gray that I like to mix. And in this palette in particular, I can mix it very easily using my blueberry and the apple color in the palette and a lot of water. Once I've done that, I apply the paint to the entire surface of my paper, and then I'll add some salt just to get some interesting marks going with the process. Once everything was dry and I had removed my salt, I started sketching two of the symbols I wanted to include in my painting. Now, normally, I think it's always better for me to do this on a separate piece of paper and do an image transfer. In this case, I didn't do that. And honestly, it would have been better if I had. Because there was quite a bit of erasing going on, and that can actually damage the paper. And thankfully, in this case, it did not, because I was very, very careful. But it's if you want to transfer an image, or if you want to create an image and you're not 100% sure you're going to be able to just draw it very easily, it's so much better to just sketch it on a separate piece of paper and then do an image transfer onto your watercolor paper. And in last week's video, I included a link to a video that shows you exactly how to do the image transfer. It's a very, very simple process, and it can make getting to painting so much quicker and easier. As I mentioned in my introduction, I was inspired to create this painting using 3 symbols to represent what it is I want to put out in this world. And so I looked for symbols for kindness, peace, and love. And of course, there are many symbols to represent each. And so I chose a lotus flower to represent peace. I also wanted to include the peace symbol, and I initially thought my peace symbol looked a little bit too plain, so I decided to add a circle to it along with some radiating arcs and I thought maybe this could represent the energy of the world and peace sort of enveloping the world. I dug a little bit deep for this one from the perspective of symbols anyway, and how I wanted to interpret this painting. And again, it's very different than what I'm used to painting. And so I'm currently working on a lotus flower. I've painted one previously and I really enjoy the process. They are some of my favorite flowers. And they are also very representative, not only of peace, but of resilience. And I think resilience is such an important quality for us to have, especially when we're going through difficult times. To keep our focus on achieving peace, it takes resilience and it takes strength and it takes courage. And so I thought the lotus flower was a really great symbol to include in this painting for that reason. Some of the symbols will be a whole lot simpler than me painting a lotus flower. You'll notice later on. And some of the symbols are basically going to be represented by the colors I will ultimately also include in the painting. So it's all up to interpretation, and this is my way of interpreting my answer to the question I asked myself. And I'm super excited to be working on this lotus flower. To start off the process, I am putting in my lightest washes of color, and then as I usually do in my painting process, I start building up to darker colors as I go along. Here I'm going to start working on creating some shading within the petals of my lotus flower. And the first thing I've done in order to start my process is I've added some water to the interior of the lotus petals. When I started this process initially, I was working with the same brush to add the clean water to my petals, and then the same brush to add the color to the interior of my petals. And I figured out at some point, and I'm passing this wisdom on to you, that it would be way easier for me if I was working with 2 separate brushes. So one brush to apply my clean water and then another brush to apply the color. That way I wouldn't have to keep cleaning my brush in between. Wish I had thought of it right from the beginning, but again, this is not something I do very often, so I'm working with techniques that are not necessarily completely new to me, but just not something that I do very, very often. And so it's good to make these little discoveries when you're working on something new like this because they will at some point serve you well in other projects as well. Carl Sagan coined the idea, the very iconic idea, that our planet Earth is but a pale blue dot in our solar system. And he coined this idea when the Voyager mission encountered Saturn back in 1981. And when the Voyager was coming back, it took an image of Earth from 3.7 billion miles away, and it looked like a pale blue dot. And when you think about it, I mean, I think about this very often. Our planet, though it seems very big, is so tiny when you consider the vastness not only of our galaxy, but especially of our universe. And here we are, so lucky to be living on such a gorgeous world. And so I wanted to include an image that was symbolic of Earth. It doesn't, of course, look like Earth, but I imagined the pale blue dot that Carl Sagan was talking about, and I felt like it was a great way to sort of symbolize planet Earth um, in my painting without going so far as to paint all the details of what it would be to include planet Earth, but really it's a pale blue dot. Just slightly bigger, but you have a smaller one on top, and then on the bottom I wanted to include a bigger one. And in that circle, I am planning on including a peace symbol. You don't really get a chance to see it here, but when I am done applying a layer of color, in every instance, I let that layer of color dry before moving on to adding more color. And I'm doing this simply because in this process in particular, I am not trying to blend my colors together as I often do when I'm creating some of my abstract watercolors. In this case, I'm doing something a lot more representational, and so I want to work a little bit differently. But this is not to say that something beautiful couldn't be created by working wet on wet. It's just my preference to do so, to do something different for this painting in particular. And I like doing this kind of work on A fairly regular basis because I think it's a good way to practice different watercolor application skills. I'm sure you'll notice as I'm going along and I'm continuing to build my layers of color, the colors are becoming more intense and more vibrant. And I'm also at the same time building some value changes. And so you'll notice that with the addition of darker values, the lotus flower is starting to take form and have more dimension to it. At this point, I'm pretty much going to start building up to my darkest values of color, and I'm going to do so working with some much less diluted blackberry. At this point, I had to switch to filming with my tablet because I forgot to plug in my phone and it lost its charge before I was finished recording. So that's why the angle change. I'm basically working with a 0.05 tip pen. It's not my finest tip pen. Maybe a really fine tip pen would have looked nice here as well, but I thought this would be the right pen to use. I wanted to delineate the petals of my flower without having the lines be overly thick. And so if I had gone with my medium tip fountain pen, I think that would have been a little bit too much. And I think this pen is doing a really good job. So I'm happy I decided to use this pen instead of another one. Okay, so it's the start of a brand new day, and I've had quite a bit of time to think of what I wanted to do for the rest of my background because I love the lotus flower. I love the little symbol I created for my planet Earth, but the rest of the background was very, very plain. And so I took out my pencil yesterday and I did this off camera. Because again, I was drawing in some swirls and some lines, and I was doing a lot of erasing because I wasn't really sure that I liked the lines I was creating. And that's one of the reasons I went in with my pencil first and foremost, and then um, later on, I'll decide whether or not I'm gonna either trace the lines with my pens or if I'll actually come in with some other color. And at this point, when, well, there is one color in mind. And if you know me, you might already be guessing what that might be. So anyway, I wanted to create a little bit of color to sort of brighten things up because when I think of love, kindness, and peace, I also think of joy because I think in those circumstances there is a lot of joy to be had. And so for me, adding more color, a little bit more brightness to the painting seemed like it was the right way to go. And so I'm basically adding a little bit more intense color on the edges, and then I'm coming in with a clean damp brush and I'm sort of blending all of that into the center so that the center of the painting looks a little bit lighter. And I'm keeping the top part of the painting this color. I'm not going to bring that color down too low because I also intend to use some green on the bottom. Because I kept my colors more intense on the top and on the bottom and then diluted them more as I worked my way towards the center of the painting, you'll notice that the green and the pink, or in this case, I think it's called, what is it? I think it's a magenta of some kind. Anyway, it'll be in the video description. Uh, so because I kept those colors more diluted in the middle when they meet and they intersect, of course, being that they are very diluted and have very little pigment, there is very little chance that these two colors will blend to create a neutral, or as some would call it, a muddy color. And I was working with this in mind as I was going along because I think adding the bright magenta up top and then having the beautiful bright green on the bottom is gorgeous. And I really wanted to keep those colors intact. And so There's nothing wrong with adding a neutral, but I thought adding a neutral sort of in the middle where they met would probably look a little bit odd for this painting. And this is just, something that I kind of thought about when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the background of this painting. And I'm super happy that I decided to go with these colors. Initially, I thought, oh, maybe it's too much, but no, I really love them. And I think they are really also working well with the other colors that are in the painting, and they're making everything um, just more beautiful, I guess. And I'm really enjoying this process. Before I let everything dry, I added a little bit of salt to both the top and the bottom of the painting just to create a few more interesting marks in the background. And now I'm coming in with my ruler and my finest tip black pen, which is my 0.25 Pentel Sleechy. And I'm going to add some vertical lines with the ruler as a guide, and then I'll just draw in some organic vertical lines freehand. Next up, I've decided to add some stippling using my Catalola dotting pen. I'll do it all around my lotus, and then I'll also do it around my little pale blue dot. Which is not really a dot when you look at the painting this way, but I figure if we were far enough away, it would look like a dot. Anyway, that was my interpretation, so I'm just going with it. But yeah, the little sphere oval-esque shape above my lotus flower is what I'm calling my planet Earth, and I'll add some stippling to that as well. Then to sort of carry forward the idea of adding a little bit more of those dark dots elsewhere in the painting background, I've decided to come in with my blackberry again, and I'm going to add some little splatters of that dark paint in the background. And I think doing this all over the background will add some additional interest to the painting and tie everything together. If you guessed that I might be tempted to paint my little swirls and lines in the background with some gold, you guessed right, and you know me well. It seems like the perfect way to sort of bring everything together. there's a little bit of yellow in the center of my lotus flower, and this star gold is going to add a little bit more warmth to the painting. And I think overall it's going to help to really um, tie everything together, like I was saying earlier. The right now, if you're looking at the two different shapes, or the two major shapes that are in my painting, they seem kind of just very separate from each other. And so adding these lines and these little swirls, moving from one shape to the other, I think is just going to bring everything together and help the painting make a little bit more sense. Now it's time for me to start working on my peace symbol. And before I did so, I did a bit of research on the peace symbol itself and its origins, because I was intending to use it in a what could be interpreted as an upside down or downside up way. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to offend anyone by doing so. And I was happy to discover that doing so actually is quite positive, because the way I'm going to be representing my peace sign in this painting is also symbolic of the tree of life and the giving power of life. And so I feel like it was very apropos and sort of like a person, almost, even if not the tree of life, but a person who's got their arms up in the air and saying thank you to life for all the gifts we are given. So for me, that is one of the reasons I opted to go with the symbol represented in this painting as such. It's the symbol for peace, it's the symbol for life, an appreciation for life, um, and gratitude for everything we are given in this life. Planet Earth, of course, also has a magnetic field around it, and I decided to include these little arcs of gold in my painting as well to sort of replicate, or not replicate. That's not really the right word, but to represent this magnetic field that offers us quite a bit of protection from the harmful charged particles that come from the sun. And I felt like it was important for me to include this little symbol of planet Earth and in this painting with all it does for us, because I don't think I know of any other symbol that could be more representative of kindness, generosity, unconditional love than planet Earth. Wow, that kind of got to me, sorry. Um, the Earth gives to us unconditionally. It has given us life, and it gives us sustenance and the means to live. And I feel so thankful that I get to inhabit this planet and that I get to appreciate it and all its beauty. And so it felt like it was necessary for me to include it in this painting. And I wasn't really all too sure how I was going to do that at first, but I think I found a way to represent the earth in a very symbolic way that really speaks to me. And yeah, I think it brings everything together. And yeah, I'm really falling in love with this painting more and more as I keep painting it. Just to share the wealth of this beautiful star gold with the rest of my lotus, I'll add a tiny bit of it to the very ends of or tips of my petals, and then I'll be ready to call this painting finished. This painting definitely fits the definition of a labor of love. I enjoyed every single second of painting this painting. I enjoyed practicing the different skills I needed to bring it to life, and I enjoyed the imagination that went behind creating it. I just love everything about it. I love that there are touches in there that definitely are my style and the kind of painting I love to do. And I also love all the symbology. What are you choosing to bring forward into our world? And what kind of symbols represents this gift you're making us? please share in the comments down below. I always love hearing from you. Thank you again for making the time to join me on my creative journey. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!